there was a time when every dollar bill you held in your hand was more than just paper. It was a government promise that you could redeem it for real gold. That was the era of the gold standard, a financial system that created a world that believed that money was reliable, stable, and unassailable in utility. But today, the gold standard is gone. There is no longer a currency backed by gold. Central banks can have money at will, wars escalate, and financial crises are as common as meals. So, what happened? Why did such a seemingly perfect system get abandoned by the world? And what are the consequences of your decision for your wallet today? The gold standard, in its simplest form, meant your paper money could be directly swapped for a specific amount of gold. Think of it like a really fancy, internationally recognized, gold-backed gift certificate for your national currency. Different versions existed. A full gold standard meant all currency was directly convertible, while a gold exchange standard allowed some countries to hold other currencies backed by gold instead of gold itself. Many nations, particularly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, embraced the system, initially experiencing a sense of financial security and increased international trade as exchange rates remained relatively stable. The gold standard offered several key advantages. Price stability was a major benefit. Because the money supply was directly tied to gold reserves, inflation was largely controlled. This predictable price environment fostered economic confidence and reduced uncertainty for businesses and consumers. Furthermore, currency stability was enhanced. Fixed exchange rates between currencies, pegged to gold, simplified international trade and investment. Businesses knew the value of foreign currencies, reducing risks and transaction costs. This predictability also boosted trust and credibility in the monetary system, fostering greater confidence in national currencies and financial institutions. Countries using the gold standard saw increased foreign investment because the value of their currency was considered stable and reliable. The overall effect was a more stable and predictable global economy, particularly beneficial during an era of significant trade growth. The gold standard, while offering a semblance of stability through its fixed exchange rates, suffered from significant drawbacks. Its most crippling limitation was the inflexibility of monetary policy. Tied to a finite gold reserve, governments couldn't easily increase the money supply to counter economic downturns. The Great Depression serves as a stark example. The inability to inject liquidity into struggling economies exacerbated the crisis, prolonging suffering and deepening the recession. Furthermore, the gold standard constrained economic growth. The limited money supply hampered expansionary fiscal policies, hindering investment and job creation. Governments couldn't stimulate demand through increased spending or lower interest rates without facing the risk of depleting their gold reserves, leaving them powerless in the face of economic hardship. Finally, the inherent scarcity of gold itself presented a fundamental limitation. The world's gold supply couldn't keep pace with economic growth, restricting the potential for expansion and potentially fueling deflationary pressures. These limitations ultimately contributed significantly to the demise of the gold standard. World War I dealt a significant blow to the gold standard. Massive government spending on war efforts and the disruption of international trade led to a dramatic increase in money supply, exceeding the available gold reserves. This inflationary pressure strained the fixed exchange rates, ultimately weakening the system's foundations. The Great Depression further exacerbated the situation. Countries desperately needed to increase their money supply to stimulate their struggling economies, but the gold standard severely limited their ability to do so. Faced with economic collapse, many nations abandoned the gold standard, opting for monetary policies more suited to addressing the crisis. The Bretton Woods Agreement, established in 1944, attempted to revive a modified gold standard, pegging currencies to the US dollar, which was itself convertible to gold. However, this system also proved unsustainable, eventually collapsing in the early 1970s due to persistent balance of payments deficits and the inability of the US to maintain the dollar's convertibility to gold. This marked the definitive end of the gold standard as a globally accepted monetary system. The post-gold standard era ushered in a world of fiat currencies, currencies whose value isn't tied to a physical commodity like gold. Instead, their value is determined by supply and demand and government policy. This shift placed central banks at the helm of monetary policy, granting them the power to manage interest rates and implement measures like quantitative easing to influence economic activity. While this flexibility allows for responses to economic shocks, unlike the rigid gold standard, it also introduces potential for inflation and currency volatility. The advantages lie in the ability to stimulate growth during recessions and adjust to changing economic conditions. But this power comes with the responsibility of careful management to avoid excessive inflation or economic instability. The inherent risk of inflation and the potential for manipulation are the primary drawbacks compared to the perceived stability, though arguably illusory, of the gold standard. The gold standard, while initially offering stability, proved inflexible and unable to cope with economic shocks, leading to its demise. In your opinion, what would happen if the gold standard still exists? Drop your thoughts in the comments.